So, we know it's election season and it's beginning at all of our condos and HOAs. And now's the time that most of the associations are sending out their first notices of the annual meeting, and people are returning a notice that says that they want to run for a seat on the board of directors.
Yeah, and that's right. But the question is, who has the right to run for the board? So, Karen, let's go over some of the easy disqualifications, right? What disqualifies you from running for the board?
If you're really intelligent and you care about the community,
right,
and you live there, you cannot.
Automatic disqualification.
I'll admit. So it's a person who's delinquent in the payment of any assessment due the association. You're not eligible to be a candidate for board membership, and you may not be listed on the ballot.
Okay. That's an easy one, right? You owe money, you can't run.
Okay. Then if you've been convicted of any felony in this state or in Florida, well, I guess that would be the same thing. Or who has been convicted of any offense in another jurisdiction, which would be considered a felony if committed in Florida, is not eligible for board membership unless such felon's civil rights have been restored for at least 5 years as the date such a person seeks election to the board. But if you're in jail for a felony and you have not been adjudicated, you can still run.
If you've been convicted, right, correct, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Okay, most people in a condo are familiar with the restrictions that you just mentioned, Karen. You can't run if you're delinquent, you can't run if you're a felon. But I get complaints every year without fail from someone that says a particular unit owner shouldn't be allowed to run for a seat on the board because they only live in the condo or HOA half the year. They're snowbirds.
Okay.
And they don't want snowbirds on their board. But I tell them time and again, as long as they...
Snowbird.
Sorry, snowboard.
There's
snowbirds on the board. You can't stop snowbirds from being on the board. So I guess if a whole board lives away, it's a snowboard.
That's a snowboard.
That's snowboard. There
That's
you go.
Right.
But as long as they otherwise meet the criteria for getting on the board, there is no snowbird disqualification.
No.
Yeah, so
we have board members that live in Canada.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that lots of people get mad about this, and they think that someone who lives in the community half the year cannot possibly be a good board member because they cannot physically attend a board meeting. Yeah. They can't really know what's going on there if they're not there. As we learned
since COVID, all of our meetings are now being held by way of Zoom. So it's irrelevant to me. Having a physical presence at the board to me clearly isn't necessary.
Something has to be said for living there and talking to your neighbors and
seeing the damage, and seeing what's going on. I get it.
Because there's all kinds of stuff ferreting going on.
Totally get it. But here's what really infuriates people. Suppose a person who doesn't even own a home, doesn't even own a unit in the community, they want to run for a board seat.
What?
Yes.
Wait a minute. So you've said this before on the show. Sometimes you can review the bylaws over and over, and there's simply no requirement for a board member to own a property in the community in which you're a board member. I don't understand that.
Yeah, and that's very true. Clearly.
So George Soros could become a board member.
Technically, that's correct. Now, clearly it would be difficult for such a person to run for the board because only owners are entitled to get notice to submit their names. But I will tell you that I've personally been involved with condominiums where once the board is elected, and the members need to fill a vacancy on the board, they look outside their own community association if the documents allow for it. And sometimes they know who's an accountant, who's an engineer, and they believe who would make a great fit for the board. And as long as that person is willing, the board appoints them to fill a vacancy or makes them an officer. It happens.
It sounds like the House of Representatives problem.
Oh, God, don't even get me started. The Republicans are not looking good on that.
They're going to have to go outside the House.
It looks terrible.
So anyway, there are some people that are willing to serve on multiple boards at the same time, and there are some people willing to serve on boards in places that they don't even live in. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
Why would you do
Sadists, but I actually had someone write to me about this, right? Here's what they said about having non-owners on their board, okay? I think it makes sense to allow certain individuals who don't own a unit in a condo to run for the board. 2 of our very best board members were not unit owners. One was a board member / unit owner and a managing partner for a prominent law firm. He served on the board for 15 years. He sold his unit and rented in the condominium for another year and continued serving on the board since our bylaws allow for it. Another board member lives in the condominium, but he's not a unit owner. He owns a business with offices in various countries, so obviously a bright guy.
Yeah.
Frankly. So the condominium is solely in his wife's name for estate planning purposes. So he doesn't own.
Oh, okay.
So here's a guy, two guys, qualified people, very smart in the business world. The documents don't require that you have to be an owner to be on the board. They were living there, but they just weren't owners.
I have a question. So only one 55 and over person needs to be in the unit if you're in a 55 and over.
Right.
And what if someone in that unit who's not 55 and over wants to be on the board?
If the documents allow for it, where you don't have
you can
to
have
be
a 30-year-old on the board.
Absolutely can. It's a good one.
So weird.
Very, very. That's a great thing you just came up with. I think that was very bright. And but there you have it. What do our unit owners think? Should non-owners be allowed to be on your board in your community? Let us know what you think.